The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar for today, Plan to Protect 101. My name is Victoria and I'm the Director of Training here at Plan to Protect, and I'm joining you today from Stouffville, Ontario. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us. Today we are joined from organizations across Canada. Before we begin, I just wanted to let you know that you will be muted for the duration of the webinar, just to keep interruptions and background noise to a minimum for everyone. You will notice a question box on the right-hand side of your screen. You can use this box to communicate with us anytime throughout the webinar. If you have any questions or comments about what you're hearing or something you'd like to ask the presenter, please feel free to type them into this question box. I will be monitoring the box throughout the webinar, and we will address your questions at the end of the presentation during a Q&A time. I'd like to introduce you to our presenter today, Melody Bissell. Melody is one of the authors of Plan to Protect, and I'm proud to say our president and CEO. Welcome, Melody.
Thank you, Victoria. Welcome, everyone. We're so pleased to have you join us. This webinar is designed to give you a brief overview of Plan to Protect and what we mean when we talk about a high standard of protection. We want this webinar to be really helpful for you, so please be prepared to type in the question box any of the questions you have. That's what this webinar is designed for us to be able to answer your questions and make this as relevant to you as possible. So again, I'm going to do some teaching and then I'll take time for questions. Abuse against the vulnerable sector occurs every minute of every day, and it occurs in every community. Abuse occurs in every economic, racial, ethnic, religious, or other demographic group. It seems like no segment of our society is immune to child abuse. When we at Plan to Protect, we say that we provide the highest standard of abuse prevention. Over 20 years, we've been gathering the best practices that are used by organizations that work with children, youth, and vulnerable adults. Our goal is prevention and protection, working alongside of our clients and organizations that work with the vulnerable sector. And over the last 20 years, we have expanded from not only providing protection for children, but also young people, vulnerable adults, new immigrants, the elderly, and those that are disabled. We do that by equipping your team with effective, customized policies, procedures, and training. Our goal is to make your community and our communities a safer one. We are a training and consulting agency and organization, and we service associations and churches in providing safe and excellent environments. Most of our clients are from churches, ministries, mission organizations, schools, camps, clubs like Scouts and Guides, Free the Children, Rotary clubs, daycares, nannies, babysitters, transportation agencies and the transportation industry, and also municipalities. Plan to Protect itself is a manual, and as I said, it was first written in 1996, and it was first written as a manual for churches. And currently, we are working with over 10,000 churches across Canada and United States. We also took the manual because it was really recognized as a best practice and an excellent resource. And we took the manual, took the faith language out of it, and it is now being used by sporting leagues, schools, daycares, camps, etc. We have a church manual for churches and ministries in Canada, and a church manual for churches and ministries in the United States. But we also are working around the world in many different countries. We also have a French manual. The manual itself includes an awareness section. What is child abuse? What is harassment, discrimination, the different types of abuse? So we focus on not only sexual abuse, but physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect. We also talk about appropriate discipline, and we talk about domestic violence and spiritual abuse. All that is within the manual. We include an implementation strategy. So we have many clients that just purchase a manual and implement Plan to Protect within their organizations based off the manual. So there is an implementation strategy. We also have identified within the manual many case studies, and we are never short of case studies here at Plan to Protect. We have so many of them. We actually have added additional case studies on our website, plantoprotect.com. There's a recruitment and screening module in the manual on how to do interviews, reference checks, application, criminal record checks. We have a training module within the manual, and it outlines what are some of the best practices around training your volunteers and your staff. In the Plan to Protect manual is a child protection procedure module and a youth protection procedure module. We have additional resources available on our store on our website for vulnerable adult protection procedures and procedures for those with disabilities. It also has a module for reporting and responding to abuse. And most recently, we've added some recommendations on how to be a place of welcome if you have individuals within, if you're a church, for example, people within your churches that have a history of abuse and maybe convicted pedophiles, are out of jail, have done their time with society, but now they want to become part of your congregation. So most recently, we've adapted and developed best practices around a covenant, offenders covenant, and how to integrate people within your community that do have offenses in their background. The manual also includes 100+ pages of appendices. Every template and form that you can imagine is in Plan to Protect. And with every manual comes a Word documents as downloads for all the appendices. Along with the appendices, we have included an appendix of all the compiled policy drafts, statements that are in the manual, and a very extensive to-do list so that you can really work efficiently when you're implementing Plan to Protect. The layout of the manual looks very similar to this page. This one is on classroom staffing and supervision. This is a policy where we recommend that you have 2 unrelated adults in every classroom. We recognize for some organizations and small churches that is a real challenge. So we've got some exceptions. So within the policy statement, we've got the best practice, but we recognize that sometimes you will have to make exceptions. So those exceptions should also be documented. So the exception to 2 unrelated leaders would be to have the door left open with a hall monitor in place that checks on the room occasionally. So that would be an exception that you could use if you only have 1 adult in the classroom, or if you have a husband and wife working in the classroom without another adult, or if you've got 1 adult and 1 teenage helper. Those would all be exceptions to your 2 unrelated adult leaders in a classroom. So you'd leave the door open and you would have a hall monitor. We also have identified best practices around ratios, how many leaders per how many students in a classroom. We recognize that many of our clients use young people as helpers and assistants in a classroom. So we've recommended policy statements that young people will not be working alone with children, but that they will always be working under supervision of an adult. And I can't stress the importance of that, because I would say that 50% of the phone calls that we receive from clients where abuse has occurred within organizations, that is actually young people that have abused the children. We hear of young people as young as 11, 12, 13-year-olds that are abusing young children, both in small group settings and in classroom settings. So we always would recommend, because they are still fairly young, inexperienced, their brains aren't completely developed, they really need close supervision. So that policy statement is for your protection and the protection of the young people. So we've got on the layout of every page a policy statement. That's a draft policy. Plan to Protect the manual is not a policy. It's a plan to establish a policy. So then you would take these policy statements and you would adapt them and put them into a document that would become a policy for your church or organization. Also on the layout of the page is a plan section. This is a to-do list. I'm a big to-do list person. I love my to-do list. So we have pulled together a to-do list on implementing Plan to Protect. I think what really sets Plan to Protect apart from other type of programs is often when I see organizations that borrow policies from other places, you end up with a policy that you don't really know whether or not it meets the legal requirements and the insurance requirements. You don't know what they've adapted or revised from the policy that is recommended by lawyers and insurance companies. But there's also no rationale on why they landed where they landed. So policies tend to get more and more watered down when they're borrowed from other organizations. So with our policies, they have been reviewed by lawyers, they've been reviewed by insurance companies and child protection agents to ensure that they meet the legal requirements and the insurance standards. But we also have established what we call our Protect section, and this is the rationale on why we landed where we landed. In the Plan to Protect manual, you'll see a very extensive bibliography, and the Protect section draws from our learnings from the research we did, and we continue to do research to provide you the most up-to-date information we can. So the Protect section in the manual really justifies or rationalizes why we landed where we landed with our policy statements. The standard that we recommend mirrors that of insurance companies, so that a benefit to adopting an abuse prevention policy and having it for your organization, our main goal and our motivation is we want to protect children, youth, and vulnerable adults. We want to protect the church. We want to protect community agencies and organizations. We really want to protect your staff and your volunteers. However, we see that the benefit to having a strong abuse prevention program and protection program is that you will qualify for abuse coverage. And we really recommend that you have strong coverage in place, up to $2 to $5 million per incident of abuse, so that if there ever is abuse that occurs under your organization, that the insurance company will insure you. They will not insure you unless you meet their requirements and their standard of protection. So the standard of protection that we recommend at Plan to Protect mirrors that of the insurance company. So I'm going to unpack the standard for you and give you a bit of a brief, really quick tutorial on this. So the standard of protection that we recommend at Plan to Protect includes, as I mentioned, a customized written policy. This is a policy that's been formally approved, implemented, and periodically reviewed by your board members, whether that be your board of directors, your trustees, your board of elders or deacons. Your board of directors approves of these policies, and then they're implemented not only in children's programming, but youth and vulnerable adult programs also. The policy is a commitment to providing a safe environment, declaring zero tolerance for abuse, harassment, and neglect. That the purpose of the policy is clearly stated, that it's to prevent harm to children, youth, and vulnerable adults, and it also is to protect your staff and volunteers from false or wrongful allegations. It defines what acceptable interactions are between staff and volunteers. And I can't stress the importance of that anymore as much as I can. I really need to stress the importance of that, because in 2016, interaction with students and youth are so much broader than they were when I first started babysitting when I was 11 and 12, and teaching Sunday school when I was 13. In 2016, your workers now have access to your young people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through social media, emails, texting, and having access outside of programs with individuals in their programs. So it's really important that your church, your organization, establish what the parameters are for engagement. That the policies are communicated and distributed in written format, and that your volunteers and staff sign a covenant of care saying that they will cooperate fully with the policies. The next component of the standard of protection is to define what abuse is. In North America, we're very multicultural, so it's important that definitions be established and identified for physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, exposure to domestic violence, neglect, harassment and discrimination, improper touching, and discipline. The third component of the standard of protection deals with screening. And this would mean that you would screen all your paid and unpaid staff members, all your volunteers that work with children, youth, and vulnerable adults and seniors, the elderly, all board members, directors, and officers, and designated home monitors and care staff. When we talk about screening, we're not just talking about police record checks, but we're talking about having a 6-month waiting period. So new people that come to your church or are involved in your schools or activities, that you get to know them for a 6-month period of time before you have them working with children and young people. That you have a recruitment and screening process that all your departments will follow. That you have position descriptions, applications, you conduct interviews, reference checks, a police record check, that you conduct both orientation and refresher training sessions, you have final approval, either by a board member or a pastor, or that there's a two-person process in screening, that someone be responsible for screening. It might be a youth pastor, but then someone signs off to say yes, the screening is complete, and that you provide ongoing supervision and evaluation for the volunteers and staff members. That you have identified operational procedures. We've just listed a few of them here. The Plan to Protect manual has many, many operational procedures, and we have made a commitment to our members that if they ever see a procedure missing from Plan to Protect, to contact us, let us know. We will research it, write it, develop policies and procedures for that component, and that we will make it available to all of our members. So in the past year, we've developed really extensive policies and procedures around refugee sponsorships, around offenders that come to your churches, as I said, We did some work this year because some of our members reached out to us and said, what should they do if they have people coming to their organization or church that doesn't identify with the gender of their birth? So we researched and wrote policies and procedures around gender identity. So these are just some of the areas that we've covered: transportation, supervision, photography, health and safety, off-site trips, bullying, washrooms, hotel, motel use, etc. The next component of the standard of protection has to do with modifying your premises. You've probably already done this, or you're in the process of doing it, making sure that you've got windows and classroom doors, that you have limited access for children in the nursery and the toddler room, that you've got adequate lighting inside and outside of your building, that you've got appropriate design of washrooms, that you lock closets when they're not in use, and that you have a mechanism or a tool to gather feedback from people within your organization or congregation to report areas of concern. The next component of the standard of protection is around training. This is what we're really well known for at Plan to Protect. We know that training can be one of the biggest challenges our clients find. How do they get all of their people trained? So we would recommend that you establish a training schedule. So January is a good time of the year to do that. During 2017, what type of training are you going to be offering to your volunteers? We would recommend that all new volunteers and staff members go through an orientation, initial training. And then the insurance company requires that every year your volunteers receive refresher training on abuse prevention and protection. And as you modify your policies and update your policies, it's really important to make sure that your volunteers and staff learn about those updates and make the modifications they need to in their interaction with the children, youth, and vulnerable adults. That you take attendance at your training sessions, and that you don't just have anybody do the training, but that you identify certified, knowledgeable instructors. So we recommend, as I said, an orientation training, which would be a 2 to 3 hour training for new volunteers and staff, and refresher training for those that have been involved in, they've already gone through the orientation training, and then every year you offer a refresher training. And as I said, this should be done by knowledgeable, certified volunteers. Now, we offer a Train the Trainer program at Plan to Protect. We've had over 2,000 people go through our Train the Trainer program. That means they have received our PowerPoints, our student notes, our instructor notes, creative methods of training, so that they can offer both an orientation training and refresher training within their churches and organizations. As I said, we've had over 2,000 people go through this training, and they come back. The certification is good for 3 years, and we've got people that are now going through for the second and third time to get updated material. We've just updated our PowerPoints for 2017, so we're always striving to improve. So that's who should be delivering your training within your organizations and churches. And the last component of the standard of protection is reporting and response. This is where we find that churches really miss the mark. Their policies and procedures do not meet the legal requirements within their provinces, states, and territories. We strongly recommend that if there's ever an allegation, a suspicion, or a disclosure of abuse, that you complete a suspected abuse report form or an incident report. In Canada, every Canadian is a mandatory reporter of abuse. That means that your policies can't stipulate, they cannot stipulate that Your volunteers are to notify you, and then an investigation will be done by the church or organization to determine if a report must be made to child protection agencies. That conflicts with the laws in Canada. Your policies need to stipulate that if someone hears a disclosure of abuse, or they have a strong suspicion of abuse, or there's a disclosure, or there's been an allegation of abuse, that report must be immediately made to child protection agencies, and that a lawyer should be consulted to get advice, that you don't admit legal liability, but that you work closely with investigators and the insurance company and the lawyer to make sure that the organization is well protected, but that you're meeting legal requirements. We really strongly recommend that only one person from the church or organization speak to media, and to avoid making public statements that could put your church at risk. So how do you implement this? How do you begin doing this? And I'm just going to finish off with this, and then I'll take some questions. On our website, we have a free assessment. You can take the free assessment at plantoprotect.com /assessment, and that is an assessment to see how you are doing based on our standard of protection. And then decide how much help you need. Some organizations and churches will just purchase a manual and implement Plan to Protect on their own. Others, we really recommend this because we find that churches that just try to do it on their own sometimes struggle, or organizations struggle if they try to do it on their own because they don't have the expertise in-house. So select a membership package that works for your size of organization. Our basic membership, our implementation membership, or our going the distance membership. If you don't have a policy, you don't have a trainer and someone who's certified to administrate the program, we would recommend you begin with an implementation membership. We'll write your policies for you within a 2 to 3 week period of time. We'll certify a trainer for you within your organization. You get some online training as part of that implementation membership. You get a certified administrator, and then on an ongoing basis, beyond that first year, you can then use a basic membership. So that's our implementation membership. It really is a great place to begin. Our basic membership, on the other hand, includes email and phone support, access to special interest webinars, access to our member section of our website, a Plan to Protect manual, recognition on our website. If you are a member, we are here to help you. You don't have to do it on your own. We're here to help you. We have many services that will support you based on your need. Everything from consulting to customizing policies, certification for administrators and trainers, policy audits, on-site training, online training, criminal record checks, special interest webinars on our Plan to Protect school. That's a website we've developed with all of our courses, special interest webinars, and our Plan to Protect orientation and refresher training. That's all available at plantoprotectschool.com. You really don't have to do it alone. We are here to help you. I'm going to invite Victoria to come back on, and if any of you have any questions, I'd be happy to field your questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Melody, and thank you for providing all of that really valuable information. At this time, we'd like to take any questions that you might have. You'll notice that the question box is on the right-hand side of your screen. Just open it up and you can type any questions that you might have for Melody about Plan to Protect or anything in general about our resources or services. We're happy to answer them, and we'll answer all the questions that you might have. The first question that I have here, Melody, actually comes up quite often. Sometimes organizations will say that they have a very unique setting. Can Plan to Protect help write policies and train individuals in a unique setting that's not just like the same church over and over, but is in a unique location or has a unique characteristics about it?
Absolutely. We recently wrote a policy for a church that met in a movie theater. And we were able to customize the policy, knowing that they were in a movie theater and they actually had some movies showing in some of the theaters, but they also had a few of the theaters for churches and Sunday school. So we recognized that here the children, young people were sharing a washroom with people that were going into theaters and all different types of movies. We've done policies for storefronts, for camps, for organizations that use portables and do satellite. We've recently written policies for a house church, and we wrote policies for a taxi company and a daycare, and for mission organizations. We have written so many policies, and we're so comfortable with this now that we really try to help find solutions that work for your context.
Perfect. Thank you, Melody. Our next question here comes from Rosalie, who's wondering, do they need a manual for each volunteer? And do they need to purchase those, or could we copy them?
You only need one manual, Rosalie. With every purchase of a manual, that is a license for your organization. So you only need one manual per organization. So if you're a church, you would need one manual per church. If you're a denomination, you would need one manual for every church under your denomination. If you're an association, you would need one manual for every affiliate under the association. But if you represent a church, you only need one manual. You do have permission to photocopy it. So you don't need more than one manual. Some larger churches will order a number of manuals for each department. I know I attend quite a large church, and I know that they've purchased manuals for each program leader. But that's not necessary. You can make copies of pertinent parts of the manual for those departments.
Perfect. Thank you, Melody. And it looks like the last question I have here is from someone who's wondering which membership is right for them. They know that we have 3 different memberships and they're trying to decide which membership they should get.
Okay. Really, it comes down to, do you have policies in place? How old are your policies? If you find that your policies are 10, 12 years old, or if you find that your board has been talking about writing policies for the last 2, 3 years, 4 years, haven't got around to it, or if you have a really small church and very limited staff and you don't have someone who is willing to put the policies together for your church, then I really would recommend that you take out the implementation membership. That's a 1-year membership. It's a right membership for organizations that are just starting off and churches that are just starting off. With that membership, as I said, we will write policies for you. You will have a draft policy statement sent to you within 2 to 3 weeks. Once you fill out a brief questionnaire, we will customize the policies for your organization. We send them to you, you send back questions, have a conversation with us, we revise those, send you a second version of the policies so that you can take that to your board and get them approved. With that membership, you'll get a trainer certified, a 1-day course, train the trainer certified, and you will get an administrator certified. Those are 2 1-day courses, and they are all offered both on-site in a few major cities or online. So that course can be taken as a live webinar. You get 10 online trainings for your volunteers that aren't able to come to your on-site training. And you get all the benefits of our basic membership. So that's a good membership to start off with if you don't already have good policies and a trainer in place. If you already do have that in place, then I would say a basic membership is probably all you need, because then you can call us and get email and phone support. You can access to our recorded webinars, our member section of our website, and just stay on top of it. We find that organizations that may have had a membership in the past but let the membership lapse, or just have a manual, they fall behind. Things, they started off strong, but they didn't have that regular reminders that we send out on how to implement and stay on top of it. Our Going the Distance membership is really a 3-year membership, and this is a more expensive membership, but with that you get unlimited online training, you get lots of certification for administrators and trainers. We keep your policies up to date. It's really like you are hiring someone to be a coach as part of your team to stay on top of Plan to Protect.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Melody. It looks like we have no further questions at this time. If you think of something later, please feel free to check out the FAQ section on our website or contact us directly. Just before we go, I did want to mention that on Wednesday, February 15th, we have a special interest webinar called Appropriate Discipline. Are you pulling out your hair in frustration? Are you racking your brain for ways to keep your kids in line? Are the kids going crazy and so are you? Well, let's plan to protect. This webinar is designed for parents, caregivers, teachers, coaches, instructors, leaders, and administrators. We will address some strategies for appropriate discipline, and Melody Bissell, the President and CEO of Plan to Protect, will join us to provide an overview of legal definitions for Canada and the United States. Melody will also provide examples of inappropriate discipline and provide tips for age-appropriate, effective discipline. Let's raise the bar on protection. I did want to mention that this webinar is free for members and it's only $30 for non-member organizations. Thank you so much for taking time to join us. Once again, thank you to our presenter, Melody, for all your work in preparing and sharing your knowledge with us. This concludes our time together today. We hope you have a great rest of your day.